Oyez, oyez, oyez. Anyone having business before the King's Justice of the Superior Court of Justice, attend now and you shall be heard. Long live the King, the Honorable Justice Hennessy presiding. You may be seated.
And I can't recall, Elder, would you like to?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Good morning, Your Honor. We're resuming with the evidence of Elder Goodchild this morning. And Elder Goodchild is wearing a cap. We'll come to its significance. I realize that a number of judges would not permit a witness to wear a cap in a courtroom, but if you'll bear with me.
This is a different kind of courtroom.
Thank you very much, Your Honor, and an explanation will be given. Yesterday, we were talking about your start in life in Rossport, Ontario, Elder Goodchild, and we covered the time when you were attending that one-room schoolhouse in Rossport. You told us about seeing a refrigerator for the first time. Can you tell us about when you first saw a television?
Probably the first time I saw a television, ladies and gentlemen, was when I was about, I would say in the 70s. You know, we never had a television when I was born in 56 to the 70s. It was like we would have to go to the neighbors and watch Bonanza, 8 o'clock. We wouldn't have a television. We would have to go there, or we would have to go see the monkeys, there till we got a television,
Where were you living then?
I was living in Rossport in a little house with my parents and my little brothers and sisters,
Your 6 siblings.
Yeah.
Now, after attending that one-room schoolhouse in Rossport, I understand you attended another public school for a while. Is that correct?
Yes, I went to Scriber Public, and there I couldn't even read because some of the things I supposed to learn in the public school in Rossport, they completely ignored me and focused on my non-Indigenous friends, I guess, or I don't know. And sometimes when I went to Scriber Public, I used to get in, how will you say it? Bullying. Yeah, we used to get bullying, name called.
We'll come to that, Elder Goodchild. What grades did you attend at Scriber? And was this Scriber Public School?
Yes, I went there in grade 7. I spent 2 years in grade 7 because I couldn't read. Right, they failed me. Then they said, "Oh, you're gonna have 3 years in Scriber Public." By the time I got out of there, I was probably about 15 years old, And in there was bullying and racism going on, and we used to have a lot of fights. The first strap I ever got was in Scriber Public because I had a fight, and a guy called me savage. "You stink," and then we started fighting. Now I went to the office and they gave me a strap, and principal at that time, I still remember the bell. "You little, don't fight in my schools." And I said, all I was trying to do is help myself. And he gave me a strap. And another thing I remember in Scriber Public School was they wanted me to write right-handed, right? And I couldn't write right-handed. So they gave me chalkboard right lines. I must write right-handed. I had to do that. I must write right-handed. And some of my lunches was just bannock, bannock and tea. I could remember some of our First Nation people, instead of having milk, they would drink tea in a bottle. That's how hard it was at times for some of the kids, or this orange Kool-Aid stuff. They would give them, if they didn't have milk, we would drink Kool-Aid or tea in a bottle. you know?
Did you ever learn how to write right-handed?
No. No, never learned how to write right-handed. I still write left-hand.
And you're holding the feather in your left hand, is that right?
Yeah, when I went in there, there was a buddy, non-indigenous guy. They used to tease him too. They used to call him Nazi, war killer, Jew killer.
What was his background?
His background was German, and man, he was big. He was big. He would like to chew you, and you're pretty big, but he was big.
I accept that.
He was big. Oh,
Did you make a friend there?
he made a friend because me and him were both getting teased, you know, and he would used to say, come to my house, you know. And I would go eat at his house during lunch break.
Now, I understand that you are friends to this day with that person.
That guy still works in Burla Mill now, before it was called Kimberly Clark. Me and him are still friends to this day.
Let's move on from Scriber Public School, where you spent those 3 years in grade 7 and 8,
Yeah.
to high school. Did you go to high school?
Yes, went to Terrace Bay High School. And grade 9, I could say for myself, I was very shy, very timid, very, didn't feel good about myself when I went in grade 9, you know. I look back at my history, I probably was depressed by then, you know, and but it wasn't for my non-indigenous friend, you know. He carried me, he took care of me. It's like he helped me all those years, you know. And
That's the friend you made in Scriber at
Yeah.
public school?
And to this day, me and him talk about our life, hey, what's going on?
How long did it take you to get from Rossport to Terrace Bay?
Rossford to Terrace Bay took us 45 minutes on the bus. And that wasn't a nice ride.
Now, how would you describe Terrace Bay compared to Rossport?
Rossford at that time was dying industry, you know, in the 70s, and 74, 75, 76, 77 was dying. Everything started to die. The industry started, fishing started to end it, right? Commercial fishing there, and the mine started closing down, right? And the town of Terrace Bay was like, wow. They had arena, they had a pool, they had A&W, they had a whole recreation center, you know, and they had a whole complete street of little plazas. They had lights, they had hydro poles, they had, you see towns of pavement, paved streets, you know, and cement. And you see this big mill blowing smoke in the back. And I said, wow, you know, it's amazing.
How did the houses in Terrace Bay compare to the tar paper shack you lived in Rossport?
My God almighty, I would love to have one of those. It was amazing. I still envy those people that had those houses, you know? My shack, you could hear the wind blow through at night sometimes, you know, through the north winds. Over there, it was warm. I walk in there, I thought it was a palace in some of those houses. I seen outside, you know, nice little yards, nice little fence, you know, and the windows, there's no cardboard windows on those or plastic windows. I said, oh, what a world, you know, a complete different world compared where I came from to there. And I had to try to fit in, but I couldn't fit in because I wasn't have that status, I guess, or that rich, at that time.
Do you know who or what built those houses in Terrace Bay?
I hear the stories that Kimberly Clark used to build those houses. And then they would say, these guys come to work, pay for the houses, and you guys could own the houses, That's what I hear. That's how they got their houses,
Now, you told us about the population makeup in Rossport.
Yeah.
Indigenous and non-Indigenous
Yeah.
people. When you were in school in Terrace Bay, were there many other Indigenous students there?
Not very many, not very many, because majority was, I would say, 95% non-Indigenous people, because there was like a influx of people coming into town to work at the mill. They would bring their families, the industry, the infractions, that big industry was just going, and there was a small group of Native people. And if it wasn't for my son Buddy there, I wouldn't be where I am. He took care of me. Like, I'm amazed how he was, because he was facing the same bullying and the fighting. We get beaten up sometimes from some of the non-Indigenous people,
You told us how your clothes compared to the clothes of other students in Rossport at public school there. How did your clothing when you were in high school in Terrace Bay compare to other students at high school there?
Can I have a drink, please? I would have to wear holy jeans, and I thought it was cool, I thought it was cool because I listened to a little Chum Radio, battery radio, listened to Chum Radio in my little tar paper shack, and I thought it was cool. But my attitude was like, I'm all right, I'm okay. But inside, I was poor because I didn't have the nice clothes like some of my non-Indigenous classmates. I was ashamed of wearing the clothes I had. I'll be honest with you, sir. Sometimes I wouldn't even have underwear in high school. Okay, sir. That's how hard it was for me at times, But I would wear a jacket for the winter time. Would be one of those jean jackets, but it was all ripped up, and I would wear that all 4 years maybe in my life to make those school years. That's the only coat I had, And I got that from the secondhand shop, And I thought, wow, we only paid maybe $5 for it, at that time,
You told us yesterday about how the food you had when you were in public school at Rossport compared to the food that the non-Indigenous students had.
Yes.
And do you remember what your lunches were like when you were going to high school in Terrace Bay as compared to lunches being eaten by people around you?
We used to go to the lunchroom in Terrace Bay. My non-Indigenous classmates at that time had nice sandwiches, had this ham, mustard, tomato, lettuce, white bread, And I would look at it and my mouth would water, And I said, oh God. And when I come in there, I didn't want to open my bannock, or I didn't want to open up my stuff because I felt shame and embarrassed to let people look at my lunch, because they would laugh, they would laugh. They say, ooh, what are you eating? And because of how that's all we could afford, and that's at that time we weren't very rich, raising 6 kids, and my dad tried his best, and so I felt shame. And sometimes my big friend there, it wasn't for him, he would feed me. come and give me his sandwiches and say, here, eat. You know? And it's some compassion he gave to me being the weakest, I guess, and he helped me. You know, he kept me going. And he said, I don't want you to quit. Keep going, he said. We'll take care of you. You know?
You told us a bit about being bullied.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit more?
In my life, I always had to fight after school. Okay, because guys, non-Indigenous guys would be waiting. I wouldn't be fighting one guy. I would be fighting 2 or 3. And sometimes I would have black eyes coming home from school, you know, bruises. Because they would call you, we're gonna fix you, dirty Indians, what you did to our country. Or we're gonna fix you when you burnt our wagons down, you know? And I said, why? I never burnt no wagons, you know? And I used to ask, at that time I was influenced by the Catholic Bible. God help me, what's wrong with me? You know, I had no self-worth, you know? And sometimes I would end up getting beaten up pretty bad, you know? And I think about 14, I first attempted my suicide. You know, I attempted suicide. In my life, I figured 3 times attempted suicide. But I think Kitsamento or whoever, or whatever you guys want to call them, kept me for a purpose. And this is part of it, share it with you people. And I thank you people for helping us. You know,
We're grateful to you.
you guys are,
Can you, let's talk about getting out of that high school.
yeah.
Did you graduate?
Oh, yes. I remember the principal, she says, you read this book to me and I'll help you and I'll pass you. And I said, Mrs. Mulligan, yes, yes. I understand, I'll help you. She read the book. Okay, you pass. Here's your paper. Don't tell anybody, but you pass, okay?
What mark did you get?
English was 50. I just barely passed. All my marks are 50. And I got it in my binder at home and I said, look at my marks. You know, and the kids now laugh at me, but I made high school. I got my grade 12. And they all started laughing. Some of these younger kids at my community and placement laugh. You only got 50.
What year was that? Do you recall?
I would say that would be in 76. There's some compassionate people out there that help me, and I respect that for them helping me.
Now, with that 50%, how well could you read or write?
Not very well. I'll tell you the truth, sir. Not very well.
And how is it that you eventually learned how to read and write better than that?
Well, after 76, right, I got a habit in my mind. I joined the Army in 79.
And we're
Right.
going to come to
Yeah,
that.
okay. Nowadays, I take a computer. I'm like a professional too. Well, I'm not a professional. I still gotta act more, learn a little bit more. You know, I could know the grammar. It shows me, boop, grammar. Oh, hit the button, picks me all up. Spelling, oh, wow. You know, that's how I learn how to write my reports where I work and do all that stuff. A young lady came in there and said, Anishinaabe, this will make you with English. When they first had me started in my community, they had me typing, learn how to type, you know?
And I understand that your dream was to be a journalist. Is that right?
Yes. When I saw my TV in the 70s, I think, I saw these CKPR people in Thunder Bay and I said, I want to do that. I want to do that because look at, wow. So I tried college, you know?
How did that go?
Well, my prop told me, you need English. I showed my paper. He said, you need English. You can't do journaling. If you don't have English, you can't write, you can't spell. So I suggest you try something else. And my heart went, there was my dream. Then I said, okay, thank you.
What happened to your dream of being a journalist?
Ended, stopped right there.
By the way, you mentioned CKPR. That was a television
Yeah.
station in Thunder Bay.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Elder Goodchild, you've told us about your start in life in Rossport. Did you ever speak to your father about that?
In, I would say 1984, 83, after I came back to the army, right? Me and my dad sat down for supper. I believe that my dad knew he was going to leave the earth, right? He sat down and he said to me, my son, I tried my best. I'm sorry I can't write. I'm sorry I can't keep a steady job. I'm sorry I didn't feed you. He said, I went to residential school, he said, St. Joe's. And I'm sorry all the hardships that you endured. Please forgive me. I looked at my dad. You tried your best, Dad. I understand what's going on in this world. I've seen it already. I've seen what goes on. And my dad, I love him today because he tried. He owned, paid land tax, he paid school tax, he tried. No, he tried. There was always arguments of paying the bills in my house. They call it domestic abuse, you know, that's what it was. It was more important to pay the bills than feed us, guess, I don't know.
Elder Donio, pardon me, Elder Goodchild, rather. That tar paper shack in Rossport, did it remain in your family or was it sold?
It remained in our family until my mother sold it to one of my friends that I call now where I go to certain places. We run into each other.
What happened to that tar paper shack?
It burnt down. I was so happy it burnt down, you know? It
Why?
burnt down. And I said, yeah,
Why were you so happy about that?
all the hurt, the shame, the pain, and the anger and the resentments that occurred in that dysfunctional home at that time. You know? My house was like in the early 40s and the 50s, you couldn't drink a native guy in a bar. So they come in my house. And I seen fighting, domestic abuse going on, you know? I seen things going on where I'm surprised I'm still alive, you know? I call myself an intergenerational trauma right now. That's why I work on myself, right? So much. Because I want to be a better human being in this world. I want to be a human being. That's what I want to be.
Now, Elder Goodchild, after high school, did you find employment?
Yes, I did seasonal jobs in Kimberly Clark for a while, maybe 4 months, because they had me hauling sawdust from one place, move sawdust over there with wheelbarrow, and they grab it again, bring it back. And I said, why am I doing it like that? This is not a good job. It's just a grunt job, a sweat job, just a labor break job, you know?
What other work did you do?
I had a summer job on MTO where you scrape those white posts this was in the late nineties, no. In the late 79, 78, scraping these white poles. 76, I graduated. Yeah,
So you had the job at Kimberly Clark,
yeah,
moving the sawdust, as you put
Yeah.
it. You had a job at the Ministry of Transportation of Ontario.
yeah, cutting the,
Did you do
painting
any
the-
other work?
yes, I was
that
allowed, they gave me a job at the parks there to chop wood, saw wood, and that was for a time, a summer job, maybe 4 months till October, started in April.
At that time, were you still living in Rossport or had you moved somewhere else?
I moved, the first house we had ever had was in Place Flat with water, toilet, lights, a fridge, a stove. I was amazed. I was about, let's say, I was about 20, 21 at that time. And me being still a young man, I figured I'd turn the water on, watched it. And I was saying, holy geez. I was wondering how it worked. I was wondering how it worked. But it was a small little duplex, 2-bedroom, but we slept there. We moved in there, because I told my dad, and we all talked, said, let's go over there. Let's have a shower and a toilet, We're getting tired of having no baths, and using the outhouse and using a slop hill and no light sometimes in that tar paper shack,
Your housing improved. What
Yeah.
about the rest of your lifestyle?
After 20, 21, 79, I got tired of the seasonal jobs, not steady. I said, Uncle, try to join this army. I seen a recruitment going on. And I went and sat down there at the Red Dog and I filled this attitude test. The first thing this guy asked me, did you have your grade 12? And I said, yes, I do. He said, yes, I do. Well, that's good. Come on down here and fill out your aptitude test. I was nervous and scared, and I said, oh, they wouldn't take me because I seen this nice fancy guy with all his buttons and everything, and I said, okay, I'll go give it a try. So I gave it a try. Holy catfish, I got accepted. I was amazed. I got accepted, me, this poor boy got accepted.
Now, if I'm right with my calculation, you'd have been 23 years old in
Yes.
1979.
Yep, I was that old.
And you were accepted into the Canadian Armed Forces.
Yes,
And how long did you serve in the Canadian Armed Forces?
4 years from 79 to 83.
At the end of that 4 years, how were you discharged?
I was discharged with an honorable discharge, rank of corporal, and my certificate. That was my very first certificate. I still got it in my book at home, and I'm very happy about it.
Elder Goodchild, where did you serve?
I served overseas, United Nations peacekeeping in Nicosia, Cyprus, 6 months, tour duty. There, I saw things, heard things, froze, got scared. And a couple of us guys urinated our combat pants.
Where else did you serve apart from Cyprus?
I was up Alaska watching for the Russian subs, right? I was up there during the 80s, I was on the Aleutian Islands. I was on a big ship, big American ship, and oh, it was big. It could be, oh man, it was these big ships, Americans.
Did you serve anywhere in addition to Alaska and Cyprus?
Yes,
Where was that?
I went all across Canada, right? Right from Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Quebec. I went all the way down to the States. In 82, there was the Falkland War going on, right? And that's where they trained us on helicopters, the Hueys. They trained us on the M16s and the rocket launchers to knock everything out. And with a lot of us guys, you know, come back from overseas. Some of my army buddies were, how could you say it, got sick. Okay, so we had to watch them. And myself, I got sick because what you see and hear and feel, you can't always shut it down. You know, it's always up there.
Elder Goodchild, did you earn any medals or recognition while you were in the military?
Yes, sir, I did.
Tell us about that.
I'm very proud of that. I was a skinny young man when I was on the United Nations peacekeeping sandbags, just like that wall, high as that wall. I was standing up there. And this colonel came up to me. Congratulations, Private Goodchild. Here's your United Nations peacekeeping medal. You deserve it. I said, holy God. I stood attention. I did all that. And I saluted him. You know,
Now, you also have the Canadian Peace Service Medal
yes,
and the Aboriginal Veterans Medallion. Is
yes,
that right?
yes,
And
Nope.
you're wearing your cap today?
yes. It took me a while because in my life, I have issues with the military and I still working on a lot of stuff in my life because that's me, right? Because it took me a while to wear this cap because some of my army buddies, we got sick and some of the things happened, I remember. And I had issues myself, right? So when I run into my army buddies now, I got army buddies back in Scriber where I come from and they tell me, you deserve that. What they taught us is not all right. They tell me we were, sorry to say this, but I love the army. I love the infantry. It saved my life. It changed my life. No, I respect that place. They said they gave us PTSD. Do you know that? I said, me? PTSD? No. Just act, look at how you act, how you behave, what you do. How come you're in such a leadership role right now, you? Because you love to be in charge. You love to be rushed. You love to do that. That's why you love stress. No, that's why you are where you are, he says. But he's a nice gentleman. But he was a tank guy. Ways they say it sometimes that's not very nice, but he says it. I don't want to say the language the way he says it, you know. But he helped me. He gave me courage to go on to do other things that he says I earned, and you got to go and respect yourself, what you served for. So he gave me an application and said, fill that out. I filled it out and I got my veterans card. Took me since 83 to maybe last year I decided that's how much I have to work through some of my things, right?
Now, how did the food in the military compare to the food you had growing up?
Oh man, it was like a smorgasbord. Man, it was like there was broccoli there was cream there was vegetables there was pork chops there was chicken there, prime rib there was even lobster I didn't know what that was because to even this day, I don't know what certain foods are. So I have to ask, what is that food we're eating? Because I never seen it when I was a young boy, you know? And it's like one time I asked a friend there, Army buddy, what's this big clawy thing we're eating? I'll show you. He cut it all up. It's called lobster, you know? And the Army sometimes rushed us because we have, when you're on patrol, they got you certain time, certain thing you got to do. They say, you got half an hour. That's it. Eat, go. One of my NCOs used to say, bet you never had it so good in your life, all this food, eh? And I said, you're absolutely right. You know, this was like a picnic for me.
Tell me about the sleeping accommodation when you were in the forces.
That's the first time I ever seen sheets in my life. Okay, I'll be honest with you. I had sheets in my bed. First time I ever had a real good bed, you know? And I had to take care of that bed. I had to learn how to wash those sheets and blankets. Almost every day I would wash those, you know? Before I never used to wash anything. I had to go ask my Army buddies how you use this big wash machine, and I had to get educated how to wash a machine, wash my sheets, my pillowcases. I never had pillowcases, you know?
Did you feel you were treated any differently because you were an Indigenous soldier?
Once we started, everything was okay. Then all of a sudden, everything started, like you started become isolated because they were writing you up. They were recording how you are doing your duties. How are you going on your training courses? What are you doing? What's going on? And you start become like your little isolation, your group or yourself, because you don't want to go with this guy. They would be watching you, you know? At that time, there used to be a SIU around in our military, you know? Special investigation units. They used to question us about what's going on, you know? And people would hang around with us. People wouldn't hang around with Native guys, or you would hear guys on the parade ground because they got arrested for certain things, you know? And that's how it was, you know? It's like you belong, but you don't belong because they got a system, right? On how to record you, how your attitude is, aptitude is, how you manage a machine gun, how you disassemble a machine gun, how you did mortars course, how you did grenade course, how you drove the Grizzly, how you operate with the tanks, you know? They're all watching you. And of course, guys, and everybody want to get out of there. You're going to want to, that's the first step to go on to the next Air Force or some kind of trade, you know? By the time I was 26, I was saying, I can't handle 19-year-old 20 guys running 10 miles a day with them. Real good stuff, real good stuff. And my mind was starting to say, this ain't it, man. This ain't it. I can't do it anymore, carrying big logs on my shoulders, running, singing songs, you know?
Well, let's move on to 1983 then.
Yeah.
You were honorably discharged. You
Yeah.
earned those 3 medals.
Yeah.
And what did you do after the military?
I went and did seasonal jobs. I had to declare bankruptcy, right? Because in the military, when you go to the bank says, oh, you're in the Army. Oh, you're in the government service. Well, sign this paper here. So of course I didn't know how to read, but I would sign it. You know, I had one of those golden cards, boy. I thought I was a real rich guy then, you know. I would go to a car dealership, sign it. As soon as I tell them I was in the military, they would just give it to me, you know. And when I came back, I couldn't find a decent job, right? Because I had to I cut trees, tree planting. I did cutting brush, right? The first time I ever cut brush, my cousin told me, you woke up middle of the night. I didn't even remember that. I was going, I don't even remember. No, I don't remember.
Eventually, you studied to be a social service worker.
Yeah, my elder, one of my elders in my community says, why are you walking around with your hands in your pockets? Right? And I said, oh, I'll go to school, go down there, go to school. So I went there. I went into GSW first for general arts and science,
You say you went there. Where did you go?
Confederation College, a community college
In Thunder Bay.
in Thunder Bay, you know? That place helped me 100%. It was a community college, you know? They had a life skill teacher there. They had anthropology teachers there. They had elders there. They had AA group there.
Have you seen one of your professors from there here?
Yes, I do.
Who's that?
Honorable Judge over there, Marcel Donahue. He was my professor. He remembers me and we remember each other, and I respect him for all the help he gave me and the courage he gave me. You know?
Did you graduate?
Yes, I did. Oh, I graduated. I was so happy, you know?
Did you become a social service worker?
Yes. I had worked in the city since 88 to 94.
And when we say the city, for
Thunder
people from
Bay,
Pace Plat, when they refer to the city, that's Thunder Bay.
Thunder Bay, yeah, Thunder Bay. And in there, I had to live in the low income suburbs, right? Because when you work at an agency, you only get budget so much, right? You get paid so much, maybe 18, 16,000 a year.
Were you married by then?
Yes, I was married in 88. I fell in love, as you call marriage. Nowadays, they call that common affairs or something, you know? But I fell madly in love with this lady. And I made a commitment. I said, I'll never hurt you. I'll quit drinking. I'll change. I'll be responsible. To this day, I still am with her.
Did you, at the time you were working as a social service worker in Thunder Bay, did you have any children?
I had a daughter. And the rent was so high, I had to go apply for OSW or general welfare to feed my daughter milk and Pampers. She had to be on there.
As someone who was then a social service worker, did you have any fears yourself at the time?
I used to go in these homes, non-indigenous and native. They were getting investigated for poverty because they had no food, they had no milk for their baby, you know? And the fear I had, I'm on all general welfare. They're going to investigate me. They're going to take my baby daughter away. And I said, oh my God, I got to get out of here. I can't afford the rent. You know, I can't afford to feed my daughter, my first Donis, my baby. I said, I had to go to welfare and get milk vouchers and Pampers. And I had to apply for that because when I worked in those agencies, the government tried to help, but they only limited us a budget so much for. Then I would have to, you only get so much. And no offense to the non-native people, they would have got more. They got paid more because I had to report to them. I had to let them know because I couldn't even read and write, right? I had to give them my updates, what I was doing and with this family and stuff, you know? And they would write it, they would put it in, type it all up. And they get paid more than what I got at that time.
Did your circumstances change in 1994?
1994, my chief called me. He says, come down and work for me. I need you to come down. I said, sure. I couldn't afford paying rent in the city. I tried other jobs, but I couldn't. So I said, well, I go home. I went home, I moved around houses, I paid rent in houses. I lived in a little Cavers Cove cabin one time. Here's a train running by, you just see the old lumber sticking out in the old bed. You know, and I had my baby daughter there, and eventually I got a house, right? But the
This
chief,
was at Pace Plat First
this was
Nation?
very flat. Today I do 3 different jobs. You know? Today,
So you were offered a position, I understand, as a family support worker, and you've
Correct.
been in that position since.
since 94,
You're also a counselor and elder in the community of Pace Plat,
correct? Yeah.
and you're a medical support worker.
Yes, I'm a taxi driver. I call it, well, but it's the job title is, medical service driver.
And you
you know?
had a leadership community, position in the community. Can you tell us about that?
203 to 205, I was nominated, elected as chief, right? And I said, oh, wow, thank you. You know, and I acknowledge my Ogamas down there. It's their hard work they do. So I know how hard that is. You know,
Told us about the difficulties you've faced already. There are a couple more areas that I'd like to ask
Yeah.
about. One was when you were growing up, living in Rossport, was there any money for medicine when you were sick?
I remember my mom trying to get medicine for me, right? My father had to defranchise himself to get an Ontario government job. He had to sign his treaty away because Ontario wouldn't take him as a status to work, right? So my dad tried to get medicine, and my mom tried to get medicine. They wouldn't give it to them.
So what happened to you?
I got sick. I got migraine, right? Concussion. I slid down a hill, banged my head, and I had dizzy spells, vomiting, concussion. They had no vehicles. They had to go ask a non-Indigenous man to drive me to the doctor. I went to see the doctor. The doctor says, you'll grow out of it. Don't worry about it. You'll grow out of it. I couldn't even open lights when I was a young boy. I had to close the blinds because I was in pain and crying. And I would ask, God, help me heal. I was in pain. And some of the medicines they would give me to help me with water. They would rinse me down with water to break the fevers. You
That's
know?
what, who would do that?
My mom, she would sit there in the bed, by the bed. At that time, we got beds. But not all our lives, we lived in, what you call, blankets and stuff. We got the old mattresses from the dump. You know,
And sports, can you tell us about playing sports growing up?
we had no vehicle. I wanted to go play hockey, right? I wanted to go skating. Our knee pads were Sears Cadillacs, elbow pads. We would wrap them all around us, wrap us around us. But we couldn't go because my dad couldn't afford the registration or the equipment, hockey equipment. My first hockey stick was a birch wooden stick carved by my uncle at that time. You know, and in basketball, I couldn't go there because I had no vehicle. I couldn't get the outfit, the nice outfit the Terrace Bay kids had at that time. You know, I couldn't afford that. I didn't even go to prom because I was didn't have the fancy clothes to dress up at the prom, you know? So I stayed.
And yesterday, we talked about the government dock at Rossport. Was there ever an event there?
There
Did
was
you
a
recall?
derby there. That was a derby and we used to crawl underneath the
What kind of derby?
fish derby.
So what would you do?
We would crawl underneath the stand and hope people would drop their coins down by putting their hands in their pockets, and we would look for coins underneath on the ground, right? So we could buy candy or pop or what do you call that candy? Big whirly thing, cotton candy,
There
yeah,
we go.
yeah. And hot dogs, you know? I would ask my dad, he says, no, I don't have money. Don't ask me that. Can't ask. We gotta save our money.
Were there other things you admired during the fishing derby?
Oh, I used to see these big boats, you know, motors. I envy them. And they would say, what are you gonna do? Try to steal my boat? I said, no, I'm not gonna try to steal your boat. I just wanna look at them. No, you better get off the dock.
And you've told us a great deal, and we appreciate it, about your experience growing up in poverty. And my question is this: was your family's experience unique, or was it the experience of others in the Robinson Superior Treaty Territory?
To this day, you go up north. There is no water. There's no hydro. In some of the reserves up north. There's no electricity still up there. You know, they don't have the hydro poles. They don't have the street lights. You know? You know? Or up north, my brothers and sisters, when a storm comes, everything is coal. If you don't have firewood, you know, if you don't have lamp oil, that's how it is up north, past Sulakau, right?
Now I'm going to ask you about resource extraction. Oh, and then, by the way, my question that I just asked was about your experience growing up, whether that was
Yes,
something that you saw other people experiencing
yes,
or not.
I saw people living in wooden shacks, coal oil lamps, no hydro. Hydro didn't come to my reserve till 70s, right? And we last outhouse, I figure would leave about 82, the last outhouse in my reserve. And I would go down to other reserves and I would see that, right?
And the final area that I'd like to ask you about is whether you've witnessed resource extraction industries taking place in what I'll call the Robinson Superior Treaty Territory.
Absolutely. There was a mine 20 minutes away from Place Flat, right, in the 60s and the 50s. Our reserve never got any kind of help, right? Mainly focus on non-indigenous time. Work, never seen grader operators, never seen bulldozer operators, never seen that. You never seen a Anishinaabe brown man driving a truck. You would see non-indigenous man doing that, you know? Never seen us working, never seen any kind of hospital, never see any kind of stuff like that on the reserve.
What was the name of that mine?
I think it was called Emmett Mine at that time. Might have been another name before that because it changed over. Or White Sand, you know?
Or White Sand Mine?
Yeah,
And what you've said relates to the mining industry.
yeah.
Can you tell us about any other industries, whether that was the experience as well about
The
indigenous
forestry
people?
industry in the early 50s, 60s, not too many people worked at Kimberly Clark, right? Because it was mostly non-indigenous people coming and a lot of non-indigenous people worked there. And my people didn't work from Place Flat there. I don't know if anybody else worked from there myself at Kimley Clark.
You've been patient with me in all these questions, Elder Goodchild. Miigwech.
I'm scared of you. I'll be honest, I'm sorry.
I'm not as big as the other guy.
Oh, I wish he was here. He would just be laughing at me. He'd be up here.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elder Goodchild, for helping us. I don't have any questions for you.
I thank you for helping us. That's what I need. You guys helping us.
Good morning, Elder Goodchild.
Good morning, sir.
So my name is David Rankin and I represent Ontario in this matter.
Yes,
Now, I want to start by thanking you for sharing with the court your experiences and your service.
yes.
Elder Goodchild, we received a will say statement in advance of today, and one of the things that it mentions is a concept called Minnow Bemadzewin, and
Yes,
you're familiar with that.
yes,
And I just have a couple of questions about Minnow Bemadzewin, if that's okay, to help with our understanding.
absolutely.
My first question, Elder Goodchild, is in the will say, it indicates that Minnow Bemadzewin is reflected in the medicine wheel.
Yes,
And I wondered whether you might expand on that and help us to understand.
the medicine wheel in the east, the south, west, north, right? In the middle is the spirit, right? In the east, it's the youth. The child, I mean, the youth, elder, right? In the center is the spirit, whatever you want to call it, God, creator, whatever you want to call him. But that child goes on a journey, right? And he goes all the way to the center to reach his spirit, to work on himself, heal himself. As he goes to the teenager, he does the same thing, right? He goes on certain ceremonies, goes on certain things, right? Eventually, the child and the youth come to the point in the middle where they meet as a spirit, right? As a fire, right? Then you come from the west, right? And there's the old. Working on certain laws and certain things in life, right? How they become more human, more spiritual, more loving, more caring, more respectful, right? More honest, right? And then they come up to the elder, right? And they come there, how they are healing and working on themselves, right? The whole point of Minnow Bemadzewin is the good life, how you work on yourself, how you help yourself, right? I hope that's the best I could, unless you need more. If you want more, I could tell you more.
It was very helpful, Elder Goodchild. But I do have one follow-up question.
Yes,
So I've heard that Minnow Bemadzewin is a quest or a journey.
yes.
And I wonder whether you might comment on that, perhaps with reference to your own experiences or your own perspectives.
My own experience, I started in '88 at the college where there was elders there. There was professors there. There was life skills going on there. There was a support group there, right? And this journey help you open up your heart, open up your flame, your fire, right? And there they teach and explain how you live the 7 laws, right? In this world, how you give each other respect, love, humility, courage, honesty, truth, and wisdom, right? That's where I started. I had to go up on the mountain and cleanse myself at fasting, right? When I was about 26 and heal and fast and pray, right? And the journey continues on at ceremonies and different things you attend, but all that journey involves certain kind of teaching, certain kind of things. Now I'm on another journey, right? The Mindaewin ceremonies. There, there's a lot of crying, a lot of healing. Because you got so many barriers put up, right, in your face and masks you have to let them down, right? And become more human and more in tune who you are and what you are. So you don't be always in a negative, in a bad way or impressive way. You know, you try to be a gentle person, live those laws. The 7 teachings and Minimalism work in hand in the ceremonies, right? Every culture has them. They just got to do it. Everyone has their song, right? But when they're coming, the evil 7 deadly sins, we all know those, right? And that's where power comes in, greed comes in, and everything, you know? And all the legislation comes in and all that policy comes in. And today's society is trying to change, I hope. Make the world better because of history. We can all look at history, the 30s, the 40s, what it was like, right? I'm not a history expert, but I know there was depression, there was the wars, right? And today they're all talking about PTSD. What happened over there when it really happened, right? So now Minimalism is a good life. We are all in the process of trying to learn and educate and help and care about everybody and share. That's what I hope and I pray for that in this world, you know? And we still gotta try to take care of our own, right? You go outside, you probably look on the streets, you'll find what I mean, right? That's what happens when we don't care and love people. They sleep on the streets, all races, right? You know? So I hope I answer your question, sir, the best I can.
Thank you very much, Elder.
Well-
During your answer there, you indicated toward the shell that you're wearing around your neck. Could you tell us about the significance of the shell?
When you enter the new ceremony, I'm in the Bosawin, right? It's the first process. It's giving you new life. It's giving you new healing. It's giving you the 7 teachings of how you are going to behave and act and respect everyone in this world and love everybody in this world the best you can. It's there to help you. It's like a spirit, right? People have crosses, people have Bibles, right? It's a symbol of more than that. It's like something that you believe in and love and respect. Well, I hope I answered that question because there's more people at different levels know more about that. You know? And it removes the barriers that block people because you have to remove those barriers. Many of us have alcohol and drugs. Many of us might have grief losses, right? There's grief could be loss of dog, loss of cat, loss of relationship, right? Loss of a girlfriend. We all go through that in our life cycle, right? Every one of us. Loss of grandparents, loss of parents. That's just one part of the barrier that we have to go through in life, right? Loss of our legs, loss of something, right? That's part of menopause and the shell that prepares you and that makes you on this journey. For me, I have to keep on working because there's many barriers I know I have. And I thank the Kitcheminto and I thank you guys for helping me to be along this way. And the more we work together, the more we be in balance in the spirit, open-mindedness and compassion, and help the weakest, we'll be better in our own country. You know, in our own country. For any race, you know. If you see a poor child out there, I'm sure you're gonna help. You know? You know, that's Bosman. That's if you need resources in the community, if you have the opportunity, you'll help. You know? If you need to study on saying what this place needs and how this people needs it, how to manage it, everybody will work it out. You know? One of the big words was economists, you know, we may need that. Like, I don't know what Sudbury has as resources and franchise. I don't know what Toronto has, you know, how to have a Bosman life, you know? But you look at it whole, there's ways to figure it out. And I'm just small human being on this earth to learn things. And there's more expert people out there where I call him Kitcheminto. I gave that gift to him to say, I will help. It's like you people are helping us now, right? And I appreciate that. Oh. All right, that's the best I can answer. I know.
Thank you, Elder Goodchild.
Yeah.
That was very helpful. Those are all of my questions, Miigwech.
Yes.
Hi, Elder Goodchild. My name is Rhiannon McNamara, and I'm here on behalf of Canada. I'm not as tall as my friend, Mr. Dover, so
He's a nice man.
hopefully I'm not as scary. The good news is I have no questions for you today. You've spoken for quite some time now, and I just simply wanted to say thank you so much for sharing your story and your truth with us and Miigwech.
Well, it took courage.
It did.
I never expect to be here. I'll be honest. It's the spirit that brought me here. Brought you here too. You know, if you believe in your life, we're on a journey on this cycle, this circle, all of us. It may take us a long time, but we're all here, you know. It's like, I never thought I was going to be here. I never thought I was going to do this job. I never thought this was going to happen. You know? And we're all connected. We're all connected. You know? In some way, we're connected. You know?
Thank
Some
you.
way we're connected. We just got to sit down and talk.
Miigwech.
I have no re-examination, thank you.
Elder Goodchild,
Hmm.
it's my pleasure to say Miigwech. Thank you for coming here today. I echo the comments of all the lawyers. And I neglected to say earlier what important thing it was for us all to be able to speak informally and easily this morning and yesterday morning before got on the stand to give your evidence. But it's kind and it's generous of you to do that with us, to spend that time with us, and we all respect and are grateful for what you have brought to us in your evidence as well.
Well, what I'm trying to say is we all have compassion. We all have open mindedness. We all have love. Right? And we're trying to make the world better. Right? That's what I hope. We're all human beings. Well, I thank you. I appreciate you for all the work you've been doing. Thank you. I gotta get off this time before I start crying.
Okay, what, might this be a good time for a break?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
This court will recess for 15 minutes.
All rise.
Court will now resume. You may be seated.
Good morning, Madam Justice. Good morning, Madam Court Reporter. May I call Chief Patricia Tanji to the witness stand? Madam Justice, before Chief Tanji affirms to tell the truth, I would like to introduce myself to the court since this is the first time I'm actually appearing before the court. My name is Jada Turan. I'm counsel for Mishpekatan First Nation. Mishpekatan First Nation is represented in this action by the representative plaintiffs, Red Rock and White Sand First Nations, but I will be leading Gimakwe Patricia Tanji's testimony today.
Thank you. Now, shall I presume that the reporter has the spelling of your name?
Yes.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
counsel.
Thank you, Madam Justice. Chief Tanji is wearing her community medallion today, and she wishes to affirm to tell the truth while holding an eagle feather.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask the chief, Chief, the feather for the tree trial is also there. Would you like that moved? So you have
No,
space for
it's
your own?
fine.
You're fine?
It's perfectly fine there. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning. Can you please state and spell your name for the record, please?
Good morning. Actually, it's almost afternoon now, but yeah. I will introduce myself first in Anishinaabe Moyen because that's who I am. And then I'll proceed with the English. Kisawekwe Petejnakaz Makwani Dodam, Ogamakwe Mishpekatan and Dinjaba. I am Chief Patricia Tanji from Mishpekatan First Nation. The spelling of my name, do you need Patricia Tanji? Patricia, Tanji, Tangie.
You solemnly affirm that the evidence to be given by you to the court touching the matters in question between the parties shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Absolutely.
Thank you. You can affirm.
Well, good afternoon, Chief Tanji.
Good afternoon.
So you've introduced yourself to us in Anishinaabe. Can you please tell us what that means in English?
Sure. My name in Anishinaabe Moyen, Kisawekawepet, is a jingling blanket, but it's a very specific jingling blanket. and I'm of the Bear Clan. I can relate to you the story that was given to me by Elder Peter O'Chase on what my name actually means, if you'd like.
Yes, can you please do that?
Okay. So at the beginning, when the first weddings were taking place, there were 7 brothers and 7 sisters from a different family. And the oldest brother was marrying the oldest sister on down to the line until the 2 youngest were getting married. And the oldest brother said to the youngest sister, if you want to see how much my brother loves you, don't come in right away when they call your name into the lodge. So they all got married, and when it was time for the youngest brother and the youngest sister to marry, and they called her into the lodge, she didn't go in. So he started feeling these emotions, and he was at first agitated. Where is she? She's late. And then they called her name a second time, and she still didn't go in. So now he's wondering, well, did she change her mind? And these emotions were getting stronger within him. And the third time they called her, then he was really beginning to get fearful that maybe something happened to her and she wasn't coming. And when they called her name for the 4th time and she came into the lodge, well, what he could hear in the distance was this sound. And as the sound came closer, it started dissipating those feelings of fear and anxiety and frustration. And as the sound got closer and closer, he could feel that all being lifted from him. And then he noticed when his wife-to-be came into the lodge, she was wearing a jingling blanket.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Chief. Can you tell us in what year you were born, Chief?
1959.
Okay, so that makes you 64 years of age?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And where did you grow up?
I grew up in Chapleau.
And who did you grow up with?
I grew up with my family. There was 14 children. Our grandparents lived next door. My parents were in our family as well. So
And were both of your parents from Mishpekatan First Nation?
my father was from Mishpekatan.
And how long have you been serving as chief of Mishpekatan First Nation?
I became chief in 2017, so I've served for 3 2-year terms. Our election is actually happening on Saturday.
And did you serve as a counselor prior to you
I
becoming
did.
chief?
For 1 term from 2013 to 2015, I was a counselor.
And which portfolios have you been in charge of as chief of Mishpekatan First Nation?
As chief, when I first became chief, I was very involved in different types of portfolios, mainly the lands and resources. That was huge. Forestry, we didn't really have a forestry department, so it was developed in while I was chief. And we also had education that we had to look after. We've had some wonderful staff looking after our education, and we have health and social services. So I had my fingerprints in all of those different activities and portfolios.
And do you sit on committees for any other political organization?
I do. I sit with the Anishinaabeg Nation on the Chiefs Committee on Governance, the Chiefs Committee on Environment, and the Chiefs Committee on Education.
And what is the Anishinaabeg Nation?
The Anishinaabeg Nation is 39 First Nation communities that have a linkage to the Three Fires Confederacy, which is the oldest confederacy, and it predates European contact.
Mhm. Let's talk a little bit about Mishpekatan's history. Can you tell us whether you're a signatory to any treaties, your status as a band, and under the Constitution?
Yes. So in the Constitution of Canada, we're identified as a First Nation under Aboriginal peoples. And we are signatory to the Treaty of 1850, the Robinson Superior Treaty of 1850. Mishippocaton is one of 3 signatories to that particular treaty. And at the time of the signing of the treaty, Canada wasn't even a country. So we weren't considered a band. We were a nation, and I still see ourselves as a nation, but as it's defined under the Indian Act, we are a band under the Indian Act.
And who was Mishippocaton Nation's chief at the signing of the treaty?
Chief Totomani was the chief at the signing of the treaty.
And is he one of the signatories to the Robinson Superior Treaty?
Yes, he is.
Can you spell that, please?
Tootmeni, I believe.
Thank you.
And how long have you been occupying the mouths of the Mishippocaton River?
Our people have been there since time immemorial. Our people who've always lived at the mouth of the Mishippocaton River. We actually have 2 groups of people with Mishippocaton. There was a coastal people and an inland people. And
where are your reserves located today?
our reserves are located on the north shore of Lake Superior, where our office is, and we currently have citizens living. We also have IR 62, Indian Reserve 62 on Dog Lake, and some of our citizens have camps there, but it's not a year-round residence. And we also have Indian Reserve 61 at Chapleau, and it's currently not habited.
So the reserve that you mentioned on the north shore of Lake Superior, what is that reserve called?
It's Grow Cap
And what's the number of the reserve?
49.
Thank you. And when did Mishippocaton citizens started living on the Grow Cap Indian Reserve?
Well, actually, it's interesting because our chief had requested a land base from the mouth of the Mishippocaton River to the harbor and to the Dory River. That wasn't surveyed by Canada. So from 1850 to 1970, our people did not live on reserve.
And where did they live?
They were displaced. They lived in a variety of areas.
And how many people live on reserve today?
Currently, we have approximately 67 people who live on reserve.
And what's your current population?
1,323.
Thank you. And where do your members currently live?
They're all over the place. We do have larger concentrations in Sault Ste. Marie, Sudbury. We have people in Wawa, also in Thunder Bay. We still have people who live in Chapleau. And we actually have people throughout the country.
And why only 67 people live on the Grow Cap Reserve?
Well, because of all of the displacements, because of the community not actually living on reserve until 1970, those are all examples of why only 67 live there. But we also have major issues with our infrastructure. You know, we didn't have a house built on the reserve until well, for 22 years, there were no homes that were built on the reserve. Last fall, we had 2 modular homes put together, and this year we're hoping to have another 3 homes. And within the next few years, we're looking at the potential of 15 homes so that people can return to the community. But we do have an issue with our water treatment plant as well. And currently, the water treatment plant has not received significant upgrades for the past 22 years either. And we also have a capacity issue with it. we can only build a few houses at a time because it doesn't have the capacity to service more people. And especially if we had a fire, if there was a fire outbreak, God forbid, we wouldn't have the capacity to be able to deal with that.
Could I just check something? Did I mishear? You've talked about 22 years. Things happening, but am I correct? You said, but people did not live on reserve from the time of the treaty?
1850 to 1970.
Okay, thank you.
And the 22-year period that you're referring to, that would be, so you had 2 modular homes built within the last 3 years. So
Well, just last fall.
last fall. So the 22 years is right prior to that. There was not a single home built on reserve. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much. Chief, how did you acquire your knowledge about Mishpekotten's history that we talked about and that you're going to rely on today? Where did that knowledge come from?
There's a few different sources. One of them is our house, as I was growing up, was the off-reserve reserve. There were no roads in the area of Chapleau and Missinabie and Wawad. The road system wasn't in place then. So a lot of the Anishinaabe that came into town to do their business or medical appointments or whatever it was, they would come to our home, our family home. And very often there would be so many people that were sleeping there and they would be sleeping on the floor because we didn't have enough beds with 14 kids. But we'd have to, if we got up in the middle of the night to go to the washroom, we'd have to literally step over people. But throughout the time that they were visiting, there was lots of discussion around what they were doing in the bush and the region that they were. And they sometimes talked about even the treaty and how the only thing that is consistent about the treaty is that it was never honored.
And are there any other sources of your
yes.
knowledge?
After my dad passed, and we were very close, so he passed in 1989. And when he passed, I felt a real longing to get close to him. And I reached out to the elders that used to come over to our place, and I would invite them for tea, and we'd have we'd have discussions. Then I started making them supper because the discussions were really informative and thoughtful. And I started getting maps and actually marking the maps of where people lived and where they gathered and where they were buried. And it was some really valuable information that I was able to gather from those elders at that time. But I also, the specific claims process was beginning for Mishpekotten First Nation in around 1996 or 97, somewhere in there. And I was always very interested in knowing our history. And I would come to Mishpekotten or to Sault Ste. Marie when the meetings were there for the specific claims process. And what that process is the Mishpekotten Nation government and the Ontario and federal government all work towards identifying, well, the identification of claims was brought forward by by our nation, Mishpekotten.
How many claims were brought forward?
I think there were about 13 claims initially. And together, the 3 levels of government would make a decision on which claims they were going to proceed with. And they decided that they were going to have a joint researcher, one researcher to research the claims for all 3 parties. And when I went to those meetings, because the council of the day saw the value in my questions and thought that I could provide some good assistance to them. When their draft reports and documents were being finalized, they gave me the drafts, and partly because I also was at that time organizing the Mishpekautan people of Chapleau. And I would share those draft reports with the Mishpekautan people after I read them.
So what kind of reports were they?
There were a number of reports around the specific claims. There was one for IR 61 at Chapleau and one for IR 62. And those two reports, there was a decision that was made to recognize that an administrative error had occurred in 1956 or so. The Chapleau Reserve, we always had people living in the Chapleau area. And in 1956, the Indian agent of the day was trying to understand why there was a Robinson-Superior 1850 treaty, what was then thought of being as a Treaty 9 area, because the Mishpekautan land base was established before Treaty 9 was signed in Chapleau. And it was only like months before, but nevertheless, it was recognized that Mishpekautan people were using the land in the way their ancestors did.
So those were
So
historical reports that you
they were
referred-
historical reports, yeah.
And can I just go back? Did you say the Indian agent at the time thought that the Mishpekautan land base was part of the Treaty 9 territory?
Would belong to one of the Treaty 9 communities.
Got
And
it.
even though people had told the Indian agent at the time that this is a Mishpekautan reserve and these are Mishpekautan people, what the Indian Affairs decided to do in their mind at that time, they thought, well, it doesn't make sense to have a Robinson Superior Treaty community here. So they transferred the land and the people to a Treaty 9 community
Around,
around 1956. And from my discussions with elders who lived in that community, they said that they didn't even know that this was happening. They one day had Mishpekautan on their status cards, and the next day they had Chapleau Ojibwe. And to my understanding, there was only one Chapleau Ojibwe person left. And that's why they made the decision. The Indian Affairs decided to transfer the Mishpekautan people and the land to Chapleau Ojibwe. So in 1999, there was an order in council where, as I said earlier, they recognized that an administrative error had occurred and they transferred the land back to Mishpekautan title. But the people continued to remain as Chapleau Ojibwe.
Thank you, Chief. I'd like to talk about the importance of land for your people. What's the importance of land to your nation and your citizens as Anishinaabe people?
As Anishinaabe, we are people of the land. The land is of the utmost importance. It was a gift that was given to us by Creator. And the teachings that I've received are that when Creator made everybody else in creation, the tree people, the rock people, the plant people, the four-leggeds, the winged ones, the insects, he made everybody else in creation. And then he brought forward onto Mother Earth the two-leggeds, the human beings. And he said he introduced us to all of our relatives in creation as their youngest sibling. And he asked everybody, what will you do to help your youngest sibling not only survive, but thrive? And this has to be for your youngest sibling today until the end of time. So everybody came forward with what they would do. The four-legged said that they would give their flesh so that we could have food to eat, and we could use their fur so that we could make our clothing and cover our lodges. And we could even use their bones for our tools and instruments. And the tree people said that they would give of themselves as well. And we would be able to use them to have our central fires to keep us warm, for cooking, and even for our ceremonial fires, we could use them. And they also said that they would be the lungs of Mother Earth for us, so that we could always have good oxygen to breathe. And they have medicines that we could use as well, and medicines from their bark or leaves or needles. And the fact that the tree people are interconnected under the ground, their root system connects with each other, is also a teaching for us, and how we as the two-legged need to stay connected with each other. And their roots could also be used for our ropes and different things. Their bark could be used. And the plant people said that they too could, we could use them for our food and our medicines as well. And everything that you see in nature is a medicine, and there are specific uses for it. Each has, sometimes they work together and sometimes it's singularly, but everybody came forward and said what they would provide for us. And the waters, the lakes and rivers and streams are like the veins of Mother Earth. And water is life, and we absolutely need the good, clean water to survive and thrive. And even the rock people said that they would be our memories from the beginning of time. So everybody expressed what they were going to give to us. And Creator then looked at our ancestor and said, now, you understand you have a right to use all of your relatives as you may need to, but with that right comes a responsibility. And there's going to come a time when
It's okay.
I'm sorry, this is really, really emotional for me.
It's okay. Chief.
You take whatever time.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Creator told our ancestor there's going to come a time when your descendants will not be able to communicate with your relatives anymore. They'll forget how to communicate with all your relatives in creation. And when that time comes, it'll be up to your descendants to know that it's their responsibility to speak for our relatives. And what's really emotional for me is that we're at that time. We're at that time now where never before have we seen so many species at risk. When you fly in the air and you look down through the window, you see Mother Earth, and it looks like she's a cancer. It looks like she's a cancer patient with patches of hair gone from her. And it really is that time for us to speak up for our relatives, because there's been so much exploitation of our natural resources, who we know as our relatives. And there has to be a time where we're starting to renew our relationship with our relatives and make sure that they can continue for our future generations.
But Chief, you described your lands as a gift from the Creator. What kind of gift was it?
It was our most sacred gift. It was our most sacred gift because everything that we need is from the land. Even today, when we're in ceremony, our elders will look around because more often than not, our ceremonies are outside. And our elders will say, this is what's real here. The land, the resources, the waters. This is what's real.
Mhm.
This is what you need to sustain yourself. Everything else is an illusion to make you think that that's what you need. The tall buildings, even our vehicles. And I love my vehicle, but it really is an illusion. I don't really need it to survive. And our buildings, you know, we don't really need them to survive the highways. And what we really need is to have land and resources that can sustain life.
Given that your lands were a sacred gift from the Creator to the Anishinaabe people, what's the significance to the Anishinaabe people of allowing non-Indigenous people to have access to their lands and the resources on those lands?
Well, it was known even before the treaty was being signed that the resources were being depleted. Our chiefs at the time used to sit together and talk just as we often do today. And at that time, they talked about the resources being depleted from the land and what are we going to do for our next 7 generations, because that's a really significant, a really important consideration for us. We have to be very mindful of what we do today for the next 7 generations to be able to survive and thrive.
When you said resources just now, what kind of resources were the chiefs at the time before the signing of the treaty would be thinking about in terms of those resources being depleted?
Well, the animal life was being depleted. The hunting and fishing and trapping were not as great as what it once was. And there was a recognition as well that the wealth of the minerals was recognized from the non-Indigenous people, and mining was beginning to occur.
Okay, so when the chiefs at the time decided to share with the newcomers their most sacred gift, what would have been their expectations from those newcomers?
Well, this is something that we still continue in this day. Our thought process as Indigenous people is if we're going to be giving our very best, then there should be a reciprocal relationship where who we're sharing with should be giving their very best as well, because these gifts that we receive from Creator are our most sacred gifts, and the land and the resources are our most sacred. So if we're giving, or not even giving, if we're sharing, because that's what the treaty was about. The treaty was about sharing the wealth of the resources and the lands. It didn't mean, those treaties didn't mean for another nation to unilaterally make decisions as they are today, and to have our people live in poverty. It's not, the wealth of the land is being exploited, yet our own people are not receiving anything. And that's not right, because our people, since the signing of the treaty, have been living in poverty. And that has to change.
How do Mishpeka'an's chief and council try to fulfill your responsibilities to the rest of the creation? You talked about in your teachings that there was a reciprocal relationship with the rest of the creation. So let's say in your agreements with resource extraction companies, how would Mishpeka'an or do you try to fulfill those responsibilities to the rest of creation?
We absolutely do. And Mishpa Cotton is known for valuing the environment and the resources. So as we're developing IBAs, and I have to say as well that we didn't have an IBA agreement signed with any mining company until I became chief.
And when was that again? 2017.
2017, that's right.
You
And
might just put on the record what an IBA is,
Yes.
please.
Can you explain to us what IBA stands for, Chief?
yeah, it's an independent business agreement. or
Impact
benefit agreement,
impact benefit
sorry,
agreement, sorry.
not independent, that impact benefit agreement.
That's okay.
I'm a little bit nervous up here, I have to say.
I appreciate that, Chief. Thank you. I should have said what an IBA is, and it's an impact benefit agreement.
Yes,
Can you confirm that for me?
it is an impact benefit
you.
agreement, yes.
And what kind of requirements do you put in an impact benefit agreement to fulfill your responsibilities to the rest of the creation?
Well, we have a number of professional advisors that deal with hydrology and ecosystems and even within our negotiations. And we've got a number of advisors that help us to understand what those mining documents mean, because sometimes we'll get binders that are this thick.
And how thick is that? For the record,
Probably about 6 or 8 inches.
Okay.
And I read one page of it and my head spins. I don't understand what they mean. So it's really important for us to get professional advice to help us sift through, and they know what to look for and where to look for things. One of the gentlemen who works on reviewing the hydrology reports for us was actually somebody who is retired from the Ontario government. So he developed water quality policies for Ontario in the past.
so are there any requirements to remediate environmental considerations?
There's
that you ask
absolutely
for?
requirements for remediation. What we find more often than not, even though we do have an agreement with one particular company, what we find is that people try and take shortcuts to remediation and to caring for the land. And that's really disturbing, because what we're doing, the decisions we make today, and our council takes this very seriously, the decisions we make today are not only for our citizens who are here today, but they're decisions that have to be made for the next 7 generations. And if we continue doing what we're doing, there will not be anything available for the next 7 generations.
Miigwech Chief, just as I recognize it's 12:53 and I'm about to start a new line of questions. And I appreciate you wanted to break at 12:55. Is this a good time?
Yes, thank you. This is a good time. I have a commitment till 2:20. But it's about 1, so what's a good time to break till? 2:30 is excellent. Thank you. Chief will take a break now.
Okay.
And thank you.
Ron? Recess until 2:30.